The filmmakers on YouTube who use Sony, Canon are better than the filmmakers who use like Panasonic. Panasonic is like dating a good woman. You know that she'll never cheat on you, never do you wrong, but you're just not happy. So let's talk about why I left Panasonic after all these years. I got my filmmaking journey started. My first camera ever was a GH3, and I used that camera for years. Then I went to the GH4, then I skipped the GH5, went to the GH6 and to the GH7. And when I was with Panasonic, it seemed like at the time that they was ahead of the time because they had open gate in the GH5. They had all these cinema features that you could use in cameras back in like 2015, 2016. But other camera brands started to move forward, like Sony and Canon started to implement autofocus. And if you know, autofocus was a Achilles heel for Panasonic for a decade. And I believe that's one of the reasons why a lot of people switched over if they was using like the GH5, because that was like a legendary camera, over to Canon and over to Sony because of autofocus. And you know, just like I know, Panasonic was stubborn when it came to autofocus. No matter how much they heard from the people who used the cameras, they still didn't implement the autofocus. And we can see now like all the noise that the FX5 is making, all the noise that the FX3 made, all the noise that the Sony A7 III made, the A7S III made. And I believe one of the reasons for that, is many reasons, but I believe one of the main reasons for that is Sony is great at marketing, and they always seem to know which hands to get their cameras into. So if you look on the Sony website, you see that Sony is getting their cameras into the YouTube filmmakers, people who are actually making films and not just like the reviewers. And they're getting their cameras like the FX5 and the FX3 into ASC cinematographers and BSC cinematographers. Then when you look at Lumix and Contrast on their page, on their YouTube channel, like the work is significantly different. In the worst way, because the work is a lot better. I know a lot of people are gonna hate me when I say this, but let me be careful. We'll just stick with YouTube. The filmmakers on YouTube who use Sony, Canon are better than the filmmakers who use like Panasonic. Now I know people are gonna say all this stuff, but just think about it. You got Danny Gavertz, you got Jock Crawford, you have Sam Coder, you have Peter McKinnon, you have Matty Hapoya, you have all these other people, filmmakers who are actually making great films. Then you look at Panasonic, and I can't think of one dedicated Panasonic filmmaker whose work I saw and say, wow, that's great. And I'm pretty sure it's people who make great work who uses Panasonic, but maybe they're not like a Panasonic filmmaker. Maybe they were just using it because they were sponsored by Panasonic. But most of the people who I see on YouTube who are using Panasonic are gear reviewers. And I'm pretty sure they're videographers too, but I don't look at their work and say, oh man, looking at that work inspired me to buy a Panasonic S1 or a Panasonic S5 II or S5 IIS. But when I look at work from the people who I just mentioned, I say, dang, should I switch to the Canon C50? Should I switch to the FX3 or to save my money and sell a hip and get the FX5? And I know people are going to say, well, if you're a great filmmaker, it doesn't matter which camera you use. And that's true, but going into the other reason why I switched from Panasonic cameras just aren't fun to use for me. It seems like they're still trying to ride the fence on these hybrid cameras. And just for once, I want them to make a camera dedicated solely for people who shoot videos. That's it. Like take the EVF off and all that, or make a detachable EVF for filmmakers. Stop trying to cater to photographers all the time, because there's a plethora of Panasonic bodies that photographers use. And I'm tired of seeing the same bodies, honestly, like the ones with the EVF from the Panasonic S5, GH series, all the way to the S1 II. They all pretty much look the same, and it doesn't inspire me to pick up the camera. Now, I'm filming this on a Nikon ZR right now, and I haven't put the camera down since I bought it because it just makes me want to pick it up and use the camera. And it's not the perfect camera either, but it's better than Panasonic. The other reason why I'm leaving, why I left Panasonic for Nikon/Red, is because Panasonic doesn't have their own RAW. So you got Sony, they have their own RAW. Canon, they have their own RAW. And Nikon has their own RAW too now. Red obviously has their own RAW. Panasonic is still relying on Blackmagic and ProRes RAW. And you really can't even use ProRes RAW because the data rates are higher than the RAW rates on the Nikon ZR. So that's out the picture. And then you have Blackmagic RAW, which is great, but you have to buy an external monitor, a recorder for it just to use it. And I feel like Panasonic is way behind when it comes to developing and having their own RAW. And RAW is not everything. And I know a lot of people is going to say, well, most of the film is shot in log and stuff. True, but still, you have to be able to keep up with the market. For a camera brand who has been in business as long as Panasonic to say, well, people don't use that or people are not going to use that, so we're not going to put it into the cameras, I believe is a horrible marketing mistake from them. And it shows why they are last place in the camera race. We can argue about opinions and stuff like that, but that's just a fact. Panasonic is last in the camera race outside of Olympus, and I'm not even sure Olympus still makes cameras. But yeah, another reason why I switched from Panasonic to Nikon/Red is they don't have an upgrade path. It's like I read a YouTube comment, and I wish I could find it. It says Panasonic is like a cul-de-sac when it comes to the mirrorless cameras because you're just going in a circle. You're just using mirrorless cameras and you have no clear upgrade path. With the Sony, they have their Sony mirrorless cameras. Then you can upgrade to the bigger cinema bodies. With Canon, it's the same thing. And with Nikon, you have the Nikon ZR and whatever else they come out in the future. But then you can get a Red camera, a Red Komodo or a Red Komodo X on the used market for the same price as a brand new C80 or brand new FS5. And I believe Panasonic is traumatized, honestly, because they came out with Evil 1, and that was a great camera. But because they didn't have their own lens mount and because they didn't have autofocus, everyone migrated to the C200, and that just killed all the sales of the Panasonic EV1. So Panasonic is probably looking at it like, the last time we came out with a cinema camera, it didn't sell well, so we're not gonna make that mistake again. But in this market, you really have to if you don't want to stay in last place. And all you gotta do, come out with the Evil 1 2. You can keep the same body, make it full frame with an L mount, and put all the features of the S1 II in that camera and keep the internal NDs. And you're good to go. Sell it for $7,000. Make sure you have autofocus as well. But they don't even want to do that because they're stubborn. The Panasonic community has been asking for a real cinema body, and they just refuse to give it to us. And you can't wait because Sony is coming out with cameras every 6 months. Canon is coming out with cameras every 6 months, and they're good cameras. They're not just like, oh, I'm just gonna make a gap filling camera like the S9, even though people love the S9, but that's for like photography. For filmmakers, we need a cinema body, and it's been over 6 years and we don't see a S1H2 out, not even talks of an S1H2. Another reason why I left Panasonic is because they have poor resale value. You can get as soon as a Panasonic camera comes out, within 36 months, it's already dropped $200-$300 in value. And a year from now, it probably dropped $600-$700. And if you look at this FS3, this is just not about the FS3. It's still selling for over $3,000 used. So if you buy a Panasonic, you really have to think, okay, am I gonna stay with this brand because I have to invest in lenses, and L mount and E mount is not interchangeable. If you buy a Panasonic camera and you keep it for 2 years, you'll probably be able to get $1,200 maybe for the camera. It's just not a good investment if you are not 100% certain that you want to stay within that camera ecosystem. And that all comes back down to brand. And I'll reiterate this point. Panasonic, you need to do better with your marketing. You need to get your cameras into filmmakers' hands, the real filmmakers on YouTube and not just the camera reviewers. You need to do better with your Panasonic channel on YouTube and get your cameras into ASC hands, BSC hands. Start doing things for filmmakers. I know you bought the Arilog C3, but that's not an upgrade path that people can do. You can't use a G87 alongside of a Arri Alexa because people that can afford a G87 probably can't afford a $40,000 cinema camera. And that's what I think Nikon did that was so beautiful. And smart. They bought Red, so now you can use your ZR alongside a $3,500 Komodo used, or a $5,000 Komodo X used, or a $8,000, $10,000 V-Raptor. There isn't no relatively small Arri camera that you can buy for less than $5,000. I think that was just like a miss on Panasonic's part to have installed for the Arilog C3 because people aren't using their G87 or their Panasonic S1 II alongside of an Arri camera. Come on, be serious. They're still using Sony cameras alongside of Arri cameras. And looking back, if Panasonic would have bought Red before Nikon did, I believe that would have propelled them into an area where they could have at least been in the third or fourth spot. But no, they wanted to do something dumb again. And the last and final reason that I left Panasonic is I love what Nikon is doing with the red, I can see their future being bright. With Panasonic, we don't see anything mentioned about an S1H2. The only thing that we see are the same hybrid bodies coming out with different specs. And I know everybody's saying and upset, saying, oh, we've been had open gate, but it's not about who's first in the camera industry. It's about who has brand recognition. Sony has that and Canon has that. Panasonic really doesn't have brand recognition. If you look at the industry, people are looking for Reds, Arri cameras, and Sony cameras, and sometimes Canon cameras on set. I've been doing film work for 6 years, and I never had a client request a Panasonic camera ever. They've always requested either Sony cameras, Canon cameras, sometimes Blackmagic cameras. And Panasonic really has done a horrible job with marketing their cameras in the hands of real filmmakers. And I know a lot of people may say, well, that's vain just to switch a camera brand because it's more used in Hollywood and on real film productions. But that's how you get hired more, by having cameras. You don't want to have all this Panasonic gear, have 3 cameras, all these L-mount lenses just for production studios to say, well, can you have a Sony camera or can you rent a Sony camera, because we all use Sony cameras. I've never been on a production where they use Panasonic cameras. And I know that's going to get a lot of people mad, but it's the truth. So the brand recognition of Panasonic is horrible, and people just don't want to use it. And I know a lot of Panasonic people, even me when I was using it, was saying, well, we have the best IBIS, we have open gate features, we have anamorphic support, we have IBIS with anamorphic lenses, and we have all these other features. So you have to ask yourself, if a camera brand has all these features, all the features you really could ask for now that they have autofocus now, and people still don't want to use the camera, what does that tell you? It's boring, it has no brand recognition, and it's not demanded in places where you're going to want to work at and get money. So that's why I switched to Nikon and Red, because I plan on getting another ZR, to have 2 ZRs, and I currently film on a Pixels camera. Not sure if I'm going to upgrade that to Red Komodo X or not, but maybe I will. So yeah, man, Panasonic, I love you, but it's like, let me see if I can make this comparison. Panasonic is like dating a good woman. You know that she'll never cheat on you, never do you wrong, but you're just not happy because you don't feel that connection with it. So you have to let her go as good as she is for potentially another woman who's good as well, but that brings you excitement, that makes you want to wake up in the morning and buy her flowers and stuff like that. You feel the love feelings. I never got that with Panasonic, and it's unfortunate because they make great cameras. I'm not sitting here saying that Panasonic doesn't make great cameras. They do, but the marketing is horrible. Their visionary leadership is horrible. And I believe that they're getting their payback and waiting so long to give the film community a real dedicated cinema camera outside of the EVA 1. So yeah, that's why I switched from Panasonic to Nikon. But I would love to see your comments below on why you still shoot with Panasonic and why you're gonna ride out with them. Like I said, they're a great camera brand, but they're just not in high demand. And if you're not in high demand, you'll eventually sink, just like Olympus did. So yeah, Panasonic needs to do something quick.